How do we solve money for clothes and taxes and materials, etc.? Was a big question from last week, so let's talk about it. First of all, I don't really think of money as something to solve for. I tend to think of money more like a variable in the problem that I'm trying to solve. And like any other problem, it's the way you go about solving it that will determine whether or not that problem is going to persist. I had an old mentor that once told me, "There's nothing more permanent than a temporary fix." My immediate response was, well, I was always taught if you do it right, you only have to do it once. He laughed and said, yep, that's the point. I thought I understood the lesson he was trying to teach me at that time, but I didn't actually have the aha moment until many years later. I used to have this old car. It would burn up oil something terrible. About every 50 to 100 miles, I'd have to put a quart of oil in it. And it would let me know that it needed it by making some of the most awful noises. It sounded like some jazz drummer playing an odd time signature. Ba-da-ba-boom, ba-ba, ba-da-ba-boom, ba-da-ba. You never heard such a noise from a car, but when I'd hear it, I'd pull off into the closest gas station, buy a quart of oil, dump it in, the noise would stop, and I'd be on my way. As long as I kept putting oil in the car, that thing would just keep going. Me being all about efficiency, I started buying 2 quarts at a time and saved myself a trip to the gas station. Then I started buying 4. It got to the point where I could go an entire month without having to pull over and buy oil. And I thought I was so smart because every time I would stop at the gas station, I'd either buy myself a candy bar or a soda pop. But now I was saving money hand over fist. But then one day, I was loading groceries up in the back of the car, and I had to figure out something to do with the 7 empty oil containers and the 5 full oil containers that were sitting there just to get the last few bags in the trunk. That's when I realized it was never the temporary fixes that were permanent. It was the temporary fixing that never ended. And that's how I look at money. You know how I know it's a temporary fix? Because when you end up getting some and you pay all your bills, you buy the things that you need to survive for a period of time, and then ultimately run out of it, you have to get up, go to work, and then do it all over again. As long as you keep putting that quart of oil in, you can keep on running forever. Carrie and I just decided to go a different route. First, we reduced the rent we were paying from $2,800 a month down to our land payment, which was $212 a month. And in 4 more months, that'll be all paid off and that'll get reduced to 0. With solar, we reduced our utilities from $500 a month down to the occasional tank of gas for the generator when the sun is nowhere to be found, and the odd tank of propane for the stove because I prefer cooking with gas. Adding the biodigester that I have planned for this year and a little more solar, and that'll reduce to 0 as well. At this point, we've reduced our food purchases by about 25%, but 2024 is the year of food independence here on Seven Kin Homestead. We're almost ready to add our meat animals, and we've more than 5x the size of our garden. So with any luck, by the end of this season, our food expenses will be 0 also. And as for taxes, what's the old saying? The only certainties in life are death and taxes. But what they don't say is that one is actually the solution to the other. At some point, either myself or a member of my family is gonna pass. And when that happens, we're gonna be buried right up there. Then, with a family cemetery and some paperwork filled out, that problem can go away too. But for the time being, our property taxes are $131 a year, so I'm not all that concerned about it. Because money goes a lot further, going about it this way has seemed to have the additional benefit of us having the money that we need to buy the things that we can't produce ourselves without having to rob Peter to pay Paul. How do we make money on the homestead? We have a small business where we edit podcasts and promo videos for different folks. We do that 2 to 4 hours a week, and that covers the expenses. But that is the boring part of the story. There are countless ways for you to make money remotely to fund this type of lifestyle. We decided a long time ago that the only way for us to do it right, so we only had to do it once, was to do everything we could to eliminate the variable of money from the problem that we were trying to solve. And although we're not all the way there yet, it's coming along. It doesn't really matter how you live now, but if you change your lifestyle and you go about trying to solve the new problems associated with that by applying the solutions that didn't work in your old one, it's reasonable to assume that you may just end up with similar results. If you're constantly having to solve problems with money and problems with people and relationships, work, happiness, maybe you're trying to solve the wrong problem. And if I may be so bold as to suggest that perhaps if you were to examine the one thing that is common to each one of your problems, it may lead you down a path where you can do it right and do it once rather than having a temporary fix your way through life. I don't know, maybe just something to think about.